What is going on, everyone? Welcome into episode 14 of the Bubba Rose Show. I'm really excited about this program. Appreciate you tuning in whenever and however you're watching or listening, whether it's on Facebook, YouTube, or one of our many audio-only platforms, including Spotify and Google Podcasts. Today, we're catching up with a guy who spent more than a decade at ESPN. And welcome into the program, Mike Corey. Mike, how are you this morning?
Hey, good, man. How you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I appreciate your time as always. And we've had you on the Sports Objective, another podcast I'm a part of, multiple times. So appreciate you coming on this show. And, right off the bat, just tell folks a little about your background. I know you grew up in Vermont, now currently living in New Jersey, which we'll get to later on. But just, talk about your childhood, your love of sports, and maybe some of your favorite teams and so forth growing up.
Yeah, I loved Boston. I mean, I grew up in New England there, as you said. So I was just kind of a big Boston fan my whole life. Celtics, Red Sox, Patriots, of course, and then Bruins. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, I'll never trade that for anything growing up there. Kind of a small town, really enjoyed it. And really just kind of got into, want to be a broadcaster, at a young age, like ninth grade. And I played basketball growing up, nothing crazy there, but then was just looking forward to starting a career and was able to get down to UMass about 40 minutes south for college and just took it from there. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we certainly had something in common. I was a big Boston Celtics fan growing up, Larry Bird, the Chief, Robert Parrish, Kevin McHale, Danny Ainge, and so forth. My dad was a huge Bird fan back from his Indiana State days. And so he passed that on to me, and I certainly love watching Larry play the game. Did you have the opportunity to go to the old Boston Garden?
I did. Those are some of my favorite games ever. I've had the ticket stubs still from that. I went to a game back in 1987. It was my first game there. It was Celtics and the Knicks, and sat I think it was like two or three rows behind, like where they had the hockey boards, like they would still have those up. There'd be seats in front of those, and then they'd have seats behind the boards, and right there on the baseline. And Bird came up, kind of like drained a three right in front of us, and it's pretty amazing. And then I went back, I think again in like '92, and I know I've been there a few times, but he was still playing then. It was hard. It was hard to get tickets. I mean, they were always sold out. I mean, it was amazing, and the Boston Garden was great. But yeah, I always remember those days.
As you probably recall, toward the tail end of his career, he battled some back problems, and my one opportunity to see him play at the Hive, the old Charlotte Coliseum, when the Hornets were trying to get things going with their franchise. I still was able to attend the game, but Bird was out due to back issues.
Oh yeah,
so that was a bummer. But growing up, I did have the opportunity to see the likes of Patrick Ewing and Magic Johnson and some pretty household names. But you can imagine, as a 9-year-old or whatever I was at the time, extremely disappointing to not see Larry Bird play. But
right.
But man, what a player he was, and some of as good as he was on scoring the ball. It was tremendous on watching him pass on some of those no-look passes behind the back and so forth.
Yeah, he was. It was probably some of the best plays I've seen. You know what I mean? I think it's underrated how amazing he was. But yeah, I really enjoyed it too. It's just that was a different time. That was fun back then.
So you talked about you venturing down to UMass. Just talk about your love of broadcasting. Where all did you consider going to school? I know Syracuse is another program in the Northeast that's very big in terms of broadcast journalism. So what made you land on UMass, and who were some of those folks that you really idolized in broadcasting, or maybe patterned yourself out after and took some things from their style?
Yeah, I mean, it was down to UMass and Syracuse, as you said, actually, and Syracuse was about 4 hours away and about $10,000 more. And then my dad one day was just like, you go to UMass, that's it. I don't want to hear any more about it. I'm going to help pay for you to go there. So it was really cool. I mean, it was 40 minutes of my place. I got to stay on campus, had a great time down there. I mean, I was like growing up watching like Marv Albert and Dick Stockton and, all those guys from watching the NBA, and stuff like that. So those are some of my favorite And then, was just able to kind of get on and working on the student radio station, UMass, and that's what got me all my experience. But yeah, I love watching those guys. I love watching NBA and basketball, and just was fortunate to get to a place that was on fire at the time, the Final Four during my freshman year. And, you can't beat that. It was amazing.
Yeah, just talk about that. That's something we were talking about off the air. I remember, I guess I was probably about seventh grade, and my dad was laughing hysterically one morning. I said, "What?" I said, "What's so funny?" And he was watching Sports Center, so John Chaney and Coach Cal had gotten into it. It was, I guess, mid-February of '94, and they had one of their many excellent battles at the Mullins Center. UMass won by a point, and then a lot of folks, if you were following college basketball back in those days, you're certainly aware. But that's a memory that comes to mind, and they had an excellent rivalry, that being the Minutemen and the Owls.
Yeah, that was one of the best. I mean, they were both like ranked teams at the time, and Temple had always had UMass's number. I mean, it was hard to ever beat them, And then obviously, like when UMass got good, they really started to get Temple's number. But that was an unbelievable rivalry. And then poor Cheney passing away this past year. But I mean, he was just a great person, an unbelievable coach. Again, I think very undervalued, and that he had a really good run there. If people look it up and saw what he was able to do, it's pretty phenomenal.
So you talked about some of your on-the-job training there at UMass, being a student assistant and getting that experience that's necessary. Tell us a little about that, and then after UMass, what was your first paid gig? Was that down at UD?
Yeah, it was down at the University of Delaware. I mean, I just did a lot of work on like the student radio, student newspaper, TV station at the time at UMass, and that's where I got all my experiences. Was just able to, take that. And Delaware was where I got my first job. I was fortunate. They needed a play-by-play guy for the University of Delaware football and basketball. As a radio station that changed hands to become the flagship, station for Delaware, and I was able to kind of get in there as a young guy to sell advertising for them and then call the game. So it was a time I'll never forget. I mean, they really took a chance on me, gave me an opportunity, and I'll always be grateful for that. I mean, that's how I got my start. If it wasn't for that, I mean, you don't know what would happen, but that was it for me.
When you reference the University of Delaware football program, the first thing that comes to mind is, back in those days, during my middle school and high school years there in the mid to late 90s, I always remember watching the William and Mary coaches show. Jimmy Laycock was such a fixture with that program. I'm sure you got to know him on a professional level at least. But, they had some tremendous battles with UD. And I thought about UD's uniforms and just how they look like Michigan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. They always had the same helmets and stuff. Yeah, for Delaware. But you're right. Laycock was unbelievable for William and Mary. I mean, we had battles with them over the years. I mean, those are some great rivalries. I mean, that's it's not as well known because it's the FCS and it's everybody talks about the Bulls and all that. But I mean, I love it. There was great teams. Players go to the NFL from that. I mean, you got the whole playoff system, which is going on right now, which is cool. And it really was a lot of fun.
We talk about the rich football tradition there at Delaware. So just talk about working with a legend like Tubby Raymond.
Yeah, he was. It was interesting because when I first started, I was 21 years old and he was 73. It was amazing though. He was hilarious. I mean, we had the best part was the radio shows that we did every week at this like pizza place downtown Newark, and it was so much fun. Like he welcomed me in there. We had a great time. I learned a lot about football. We joked around. I mean, he was just, again, I don't know how else I would explain, like, just to have that kind of experience with a legend, a Hall of Famer, as a guy coming right out of college, and for him to welcome me in and respect me and just, help me along. I mean, we had a great time. I mean, and I needed a year or two, to kind of get going there. So, but he was awesome. And I had him for 3 years and then he retired. Yeah, I mean, you can't draw that one up. You know what I mean?
During your time there at Delaware, the Blue Hens played in multiple national title games. So just talk about not only being able to get your feet wet in broadcasting, but doing it at a place with so much football tradition, and kind of like you've already touched on, but and coming across guys like Joe Flacco and a lot of other guys that went on to solid careers in the NFL.
Yeah, that was we had an unbelievable run. I mean, won the title in 2003. Flacco was there, went to the championship game in '07, lost to App State, and then 2010 back to tell the game. Unfortunately, lost to Eastern Washington, but it was it was successful. I mean, we get to the playoffs most years. I mean, it was either kind of a year where it was like, or we definitely made a run. So I know the fans kind of got a little like, hey, what's the deal this year? It's like, hey, look at we went to the tournament a bunch of times and played for 3 national championships. It's like, I'll take that as opposed to, just getting to the playoffs every year or almost every other year, then not doing anything. Like, no, we made strides. I mean, it was probably should have won that 2010 title game up by 19 points, and fell in that one. But and Flacco, as amazing as he was, I mean, we went up against that App State team that, if you remember during the time, won a couple titles in a row. They were just sick. I mean, they were an unbelievable team. But yeah, that whole experience there, it was the people. We had so many great people with us on the radio station and traveling and all the fun stories. And again, that's something that I'll never forget. I have a lot of really good friends I still stay in touch with from that. And that's what I'll always remember too. Great players and awesome program, the coaching staff, but a lot of unbelievable people too. Whether it was at UD, in our radio station, on our crew, that's what it's all about. It really is.
So after spending 13 or 14 years there at the University of Delaware, and talk about that decision to move on and what went into that and where'd you go next?
Yeah, it was just about kind of getting some more opportunities on TV, which I was given, and I needed enough to say, okay, it's time to leave the station. Only because I needed to focus on the television. I mean, I can't. I was kind of doing the sales as well, and I stopped doing Delaware radio, but kept doing sales of the radio station while I was still doing TV. And then once that became enough, I was like, okay, I got to break away from this to really focus and make this just a career. So I was able to finally do that. And it was tough. I mean, there was a lot of good people there too, and I was there for 15 total years. And making pretty good money and all that. So it was like, okay, and then to just leave that to move on. It took a minute, but it was like, you know what, this is the right move, and it's worked out really well.
Talk about your first experience on TV with ESPN. Do you recall that broadcast? What game was it, and how did it turn out?
Yeah, it was a lacrosse game. That's how I got started on ESPN. I was doing lacrosse, and it's eluding me right now, the first one I did. But I believe it probably was down at Johns Hopkins, I think, which is in Baltimore. We do a lot of games down there. But yeah, I thought it was fine. I mean, I really, I'd done TV for a while, probably about 5 or 6 years here and there. I should say, yeah, maybe even a little bit longer. But then when I got to ESPN, I was like, okay, I can do this. And, we had a really good season. That was a lot of fun. And then they moved me into doing some football in the fall and then basketball. And I just kind of took off from there. But that was kind of how I got my start, was like was getting the lacrosse, on ESPN. And that's how you have to do it. I mean, sometimes you got to do different sports, different games, take every opportunity you can get. And then it turns into something like that. So that's how it happened for me.
You talk about calling football games. That's how I became familiar with you. Rini Ngolia, obviously a fellow UMass alum, tremendous running back for the Minutemen. And so just talk about that relationship you had with Rini. And a lot of times, at least in the last few years, you've been on the call together.
Yeah, we have. That just worked out really, really well. I mean, I met him. Well, I knew him in college, of course, because I was doing the games, student radio. He was the running back for UMass, and then he graduated a few years before me. But yeah, we reconnected again, like in, I don't know, I think it was like '08 or something like that. And he said, hey, how do you get, involved, and what's not, and I'm like, yeah, here's some names of some people that I worked with Comcast Sportsnet, which is now NBC Sports, regional networks. And he got going, and he was starting to do radio with UMass, and then all of a sudden we started getting into the ESPN, and I was on, and he would start to do some games with like ESPN3, and then like next year, boom, he was up with me, and we were both on the ESPNU, and they put us together, and I don't think they even knew that we both went to UMass. They didn't really even know the connection, but him and I did, and we were, of course, talking and helping each other out. So I'm like, oh, this is great, and it went from there. And then I think they recognized the connection we had and the great friendship, and it was fun. It's awesome to do games with him, and I hope we get to go back and do some more. This year was certainly a little bit messed up, and we didn't really get to work together. So I'm hoping that they get us back going again, and it's a little more consistent like in years past. But yeah, he's just the best.
Mike, you obviously travel tremendously, so just talk about that. Some of the places you've been, some of the cool college towns, and coaches you've had the opportunity to interact with. Whether it's a household name or maybe one who's, in your estimation, underrated. But talk about some of those experiences that your jobs enabled you to have.
Yeah, there's so many places. I mean, it's hard to really kind of pick out one specific location. I mean, we went everywhere. I mean, we've gotten a couple like NFL stadiums, which has been fun, to call games in there. Got to go to the Superdome a couple of years ago. Ford Field in Detroit, we did like a bowl game there, which is a lot of fun. I always enjoy going to Cincinnati. They got some great like steak restaurants there that we enjoy. That we got to know the owners at, so we go there. Nashville is one of my favorite cities in the country, if not the favorite. Just an unbelievable town. I did a couple of bowl games there on the radio for the Music City Bowl, and that's been a lot of fun. And everywhere. I mean, I got to go see friends and family. You catch up with them when you get on the road for games. It all just kind of works out. I mean, that's what's great about it. You just take every advantage of travel, especially taken care of by the company, and I'm there to do a job, but to be able to go see different people and do games and learn the culture. And I mean, I can't complain at all. I mean, I probably wouldn't have even gone to some of these places. I mean, even when I was back at UMass, we went to Hawaii for a game, and I've been to Vegas, and then I went to been to Houston and California, and just like other states too, like Idaho and Montana and I mean Utah, everywhere that you'd be like, well, what am I going to do here? I'd say, well, I'm doing a game, and it's just like it's pretty cool, So I've enjoyed it. There's just hard to kind of pick a different spot or two, but those are some of the places we've been, and we've really enjoyed it.
You talk about it being hard to pick a spot or two in terms of just different venues and so forth. How about favorite games that you had the opportunity to call, and just some that really stick out in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, the bowl games were always a lot of fun. And I just talked to Rini about this the other day. The last game we had done was because we didn't get to do anything this past year. It was 2019, the Ford Field for the bowl there. And that one, that to me, I'm just kind of looking back at my little press pass here on the wall, the Quick Lane Bowl. Again, it's just an unbelievable atmosphere. It was probably the single biggest game we've called, like over 3 million people watched that one. And, that's something I'll remember. The championship game in 2003 with Delaware football, of course, that was a great run. Even the Flacco season, that was really just a fun year with so many cool venues in 07. And then I don't know, I've done some NIT games, but in Oklahoma State was a pretty cool atmosphere there. Very different environment. And just having like packed crowds and places at different games for basketball has been fun. I just like St. Louis I've been to, and VCU, and just different arenas where the atmosphere and the fans make it fun. So those are a couple right there. But yeah, I mean, there's been a lot, and been very fortunate to do the Olympics too, so I can't forget about that and those experiences. That's that's amazing. Torino, Italy, and Vancouver went to do Winter Olympics on the radio. While the Summer Olympics, I've been fortunate with NBC. I've been in the studio, so I haven't got to travel to those that I did. But the ones I went to in Italy and Vancouver, two unbelievable places, of course. So those are more great experiences that I've been fortunate enough to have.
On the college basketball side of things, you mentioned Oklahoma State, obviously Gallagher Iba Arena, legendary arena. Some folks refer to it as what the MSG, the Madison Square Garden of the Plains. And we actually had Dr. Chris Croft, who's a professor at the University of Southern Mississippi, who spent um, I guess about 15 or 20 years in Division I basketball coaching prior to that, and had been on Coach Sutton's staff. So I enjoyed hearing his thoughts on Gallagher-Iba Arena, and a lot of tremendous players, but then just unbelievable atmosphere there in Stillwater.
Yeah, it really is. No, it is. I mean, you're right on top of the court. The fans, it was loud. I mean, it was super loud. I mean, I was there for an NIT game, and I think it was probably a couple, thousand fans away from being packed. And even at that, I mean, it was nuts. I'm like, this place is awesome. So I can only imagine. I mean, I should say even regular season game, because that game was really like a whatever game you want to say. I mean, it was just an awesome crowd and atmosphere there. Would love to go to more of those places. Haven't done as many, like in the SEC or the Big Ten or the Big 12, and those kind of schools sometimes that get those crowds are pretty unbelievable, because that's what you do there. You make it a point to go to those games. So it was pretty fun.
Yeah, like you're saying, I remember when Gallagher-Iba was expanded from old 6,500 or 7,000 to the 13 or 14,000 as it is now. But on TV, it certainly looks as though it's pretty vertical, as you're saying, right on top of the court.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I mean, they're sitting right there, and the sound, the way that it's built, funnels down. I mean, that there's some arenas that it's not like that. Sometimes you go to huge arenas, and it's not as loud. Like, I mean, I went to Tennessee. I did a basketball game in Tennessee. Literally, that one was almost sold out. 20,000 fans there. I mean, the arena at Tennessee. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's like an NBA, arena. And I'm like, this is crazy. I mean, it was Tennessee, Florida a couple of years ago. I got to do there, and I'll say Gallagher-Iba was like louder, and then there's other places that I felt like were louder too. And I'm like, how is this possible? But, it all depends. But yeah, that place had like, almost 20,000 that day. Not that it wasn't loud or a great atmosphere, but I'm just thinking like sometimes it's better to have a little more quaint or, designed buildings a little differently. I mean, that was just mammoth, but still an unbelievable home court, for a college team. I mean, it's crazy.
Now, Mike, I wanted to talk about some of the other aspects of what you do. As a viewer or a listener, we just turn on the TV or turn on the radio, what have you, tune in radio, and we're just taking part in the broadcast that way. But give us a glimpse behind the scenes with all the prep time, watching film, meeting with coaches, and everything that you do to make sure you're doing your job as well as you can do it.
Yeah, I mean, there's there's a significant amount of prep. I mean, you put your roster together, you put all the stats together, you talk to all the coaches, you try to get in touch with some of the players as well, talk to them. I always talk to like the sports information director for each team, which is the person who puts all their information together and the notes and gets you all the interview schedule and all that. Getting in touch with our producer, the analyst I'm working with, going over the storylines, going over the rundown, the open, the halftime, all of our graphics, all of the information, all the packages. I mean, and then, there's just, in a normal year traveling and getting to the site and, doing all that. And there's a tremendous amount of behind the scenes and prep and work that goes into it. It's fun. I mean, I don't look at it like work, which is great. But yeah, it's not just show up and do a game for 2 hours and that's it. But that's like a lot of things, even like a coach, or a team, and just like, hey, you go to watch the game and you're like, all right, here we are. Well, they've been practicing all week for this, and they've been working on stuff, and it doesn't always happen the way they want it. They don't always get every play in. We don't always get every story in, and you just have to adapt. And that's the whole point of it. Like, you're not going to, but you have to be ready for it. We're like a team, that's exactly kind of the way it is. You prepare and you get what you can, and you do what you need to do, and then you adapt to the game. It's about what's going on in front of you. So you got to be ready for that too.
Now, when you've been meeting with players or coaches, right there prior to a day or two before competition, are there any of those meetings? I know there's been so many. Are there any that really stand out? Funny moments that you may be able to share?
Yeah, I can't really remember that, like in terms of just specific times of people. I mean, we've met a lot of different players and coaches. I mean, there have been some really good interviews and really special people that we've met with some really cool background stories, I'm sure, but it's not not any one or two. I'm like, oh, definitely this one or this coach is the best. I mean, I just like guys who are down to earth and, give us the information and, are excited that we're there to help cover and promote their team and then that, value the job we have to do. And there's a lot of coaches like that. And then there's some that are just like, yeah, whatever. But, it's okay. I mean, that's part of the job, I mean, I'm sure, sure there could be a lot of other things going on they have to deal with too. So I try not to judge. But yeah, there's a wide range, of different ones that we've had, to be honest.
Now here locally, well, I'm in the greater Charlotte area, but I'm an East Carolina fan, as you know, and as folks see there on the screen. But with East Carolina, we've hosted BYU back in, I guess, 2016, 2017. But when BYU came to town, Morgan Ahlers, who's the father of current quarterback Holton Ahlers, Morgan was just talking about the challenge of preparing for that game and making sure he had all the names right. So have you called any BYU games? Just talk about that, and then BYU, Hawaii, some of those rosters that have more challenging names.
Oh yeah, no, I have. I've done a BYU game, and it's not just them. It could be anybody. Where you just got to write the names out phonetically. I mean, that's what I do. I just write it down, and I go, all right, and I don't care how they actually spell it. I write it so that when I see it, I know how to say it. So that's the way you have to do it. I mean, my board will have all names if it's hard, written phonetically. So and you got to look at it a couple times so that when you see it, you're just like, oh, boom. And that's what I do. So the names to me, whether they're difficult or not, sure, it makes it easier if it's, Bob Smith or whatever. But if it's not, I just write it that way. And then every time I see it, I just call it. But yeah, I get like sometimes I see the names and, it could look like a certain way, definitely. And you're like, oh, that's whatever. But I go over it with the team every time, no matter what. And they're like, oh no, that's spelled, that's pronounced this way, or they'll have it in their pronunciation guide. And then I revert back to being like, why did this person's parents, do this to this child, like spell their name this way, or just try to be different, you know what I mean? Like just a different letter or a letter silent or whatever, just so they can be different. It's like every class, every person they go to, every time they write their name on something, anybody that calls them is always going to say it the wrong way. I don't understand why they do that. It's just like, it's kind of funny, but
Absolutely.
yeah.
One of the other many challenges that you guys face with your job, and and you've done it for long enough now, but I've heard folks in Rini specifically just talking, with someone talking in your ear. So just describe what that's like, while you're trying to focus and call a game, and you have someone talking in your ear.
Yeah, no, I mean that's part of the job for sure. I mean, you definitely get used to it. Like anybody would say, to anything, it's you learn. I mean, that like if somebody was working on a job that I knew nothing about or whatever, I'd be like, wow, how do you do all that? And I'm just like, well, I do. I mean, that's you learn it. Like that's the same thing here. Like I couldn't do that if somebody was talking to my ear the whole time. If you did this for a living or you love to do this and this is how it was, you would definitely get used to it. And for doing it for 15 whatever years, that's exactly 20 years. I mean, that's exactly what happens. So the producer will come in your ear and they'll tell you something, but they try to be quick and brief, and they count you to break. Like, so when you're going to break, you're hearing the count in your ear, like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, as you're talking over whatever you want to say, going to break. But it's just now second nature, because I know I just have to be out before one, or just to give it a second before they go to break, and I'm just saying what I'm saying. So once you get used to that, it doesn't bother you and it's not going to mess you up. Now, if the producer's in your ear and the analyst is talking and then you hear some noise and something else is going on, yeah, I might miss things. I might, hey, what was that again? I mean, because it is a little difficult because you are trying to pay attention, and sometimes it'll come in and it's too loud and then I can't hear what the analyst is saying. But basically, if the other person's talking, I have them in my right ear. And if the producer comes in, he only comes into my left ear. So again, I know it sounds crazy, but I should still be able to hear what's being said or what's going on. And then the producer just come in and say, hey, go into the blah, blah, blah package when he's done. So it's not a lot. So, I mean, if it's just a quick, note or direction we're going in, I can gather that, still hear what the other guy's saying, and be okay with it. So that's how that works.
Yeah, I heard an interesting analogy or comparison there by Rini talking about it. And he said, if you have your GPS on your phone, your GPS will still talk, while you're obviously maybe
Yeah.
listening to someone in the car or listening to someone on the phone.
Right.
So that's the way he described it.
That's a great point. Yeah, so people can understand like what that's like exactly, because the GPS comes in and interrupts your call, or if you had the music playing in your car, right, and then
Right.
that comes in. So it's exactly what happens to TV. It like ducks the level of the music a little bit, brings it down a little bit, and then brings up the person saying, "Hey, take a right at the next stop sign." That's kind of what happens here. It ducks the level of what we're hearing for a second to pipe in for the producer telling me something, and then it goes right back to the original level. So yeah, like if you're in your car and you hear that, now you know what it's like. And that's why audio is so important too. I don't think people for me, it really is. And I'm sure other broadcasters feel the same way. But yeah, if that level is too loud or you can't hear them or the other one's drowning you out, it's got to be a mix. Same thing in your car. You're like, wait, I still want to hear the song, or I don't want to hear it that loud. Like, you have to decide how loud that needs to be coming in on, and sometimes you don't get that choice and it like annoys you. It's like, that's what would happen if you're on a broadcast and you don't get that chance to get it corrected and fixed, because that's when it could be disastrous. Like, and that's how important it is for audio and to have it set correctly. Because, and then it's a great analogy that you brought that up. Yeah.
Few more things as we begin to wind the conversation down. I know you have a unique opportunity to. Is your brother your spotter? Is that correct?
Yeah, he's my spotter. Again, we didn't really get to do anything this year, but normally he'd be with me in every football game and stands right next to me, and yeah, helps me out.
So that's something I had no idea that was the case until I was doing my homework preparing for this conversation, and I was like, wow, that was. I think I saw a picture of the two of you, and as well as Rini, somewhere out west. Maybe I don't know if it was the old Colorado State Stadium or where have you. You guys were up in the mountains.
Yeah, no, that's we've done a lot of games in a lot of different cities all over the country. And he's traveled with us, and it's been fun. I mean, you have to have somebody you trust, obviously, doing spotting, and I do that with my brother for sure. And he's been very helpful, and I think we've kind of got it down to a pretty good science now, which has been good. I mean, we've certainly if you don't have a game that you like, or something gets messed up, then you have to go back and you got to assess it, and we've done that. And nobody's perfect, but I think we've really got it dialed in pretty well. So I kind of look forward to the days where we can go back and do that, because it's a huge help having him next to me.
Earlier, we talked about your time at UMass and your love for your alma mater. I know you've had the opportunity to return there and address the Minutemen football team and probably other programs, and pay it forward, so to speak. So just talk about that opportunity and embracing that with your alma mater or other places.
Yeah, I've had a lot of opportunities there. I mean, I went back and talked to different classes, especially the kids at the student radio station, because that's where I got all my experience and means so much to me. And I've done a bunch of Zooms with them this past year, helping them out, keeping their spirits up and whatever they can do now with everything going on. I'm working on, trying to set up a kind of an endowment and a scholarship actually at UMass for students who are in the social student media. So we're working on that. Hopefully get that done in the very near future. And it hasn't really been out there at all, but I'll, mention it to you, but we're working on it. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun, because we'd like to kind of give back. And there's a lot of great alumni and people that are in this business that are still doing this stuff today. So I think it's important that we help those students, as well, because people helped us when we were growing up. And there's just so many other things we're trying to do there. And I'm going to hopefully go back again this summer and see some friends, see some people. We're working on a couple other things too behind the scenes at that school as well. So, I mean, I try to stay active for sure. And, hopefully have some more info for you in the near future about that. But it's been pretty fun, and I'm just proud that I went to school there.
Final thing for you, Mike, when you're not broadcasting a game or, or traveling to broadcast and so forth, just in your downtime, what are your hobbies? I know you're married with a young daughter. So just tell us what your life is like, just in that downtime.
Yeah, and it's been good because I've been home. I've gotten to spend a lot more time with her, which has been great. Delaney, 2.5 years old now, or will be in a couple of weeks, 2.5, and really just so special. Getting to run around and starting to say everything, repeating things now, as you know, and it's just I'm going through that process, and I've enjoyed every step of the way. Like I know when people say, "Oh yeah, it goes by fast," and they're absolutely right. It certainly does. But I'm not ever wishing any time away or hoping that she was older or younger or any of that. I'm really trying to enjoy every step of the her growing up, which has been great. So that's kind of my focus there when I'm not working, of course, and being home. And we haven't been able to do a lot as many people going any places and doing a lot of traveling. But I enjoy traveling. I mean, I really do like going on the road doing games. But I'll tell you, some of it is good to be home too, because then the game's over and boom, I'm here. Can go see her. I can do what I need to do. It's a little less stressful, to be honest. I mean, I know some people are more stressed, some people are less, some people have more time, some people have less time. I mean, it's crazy. It's just crazy. But I always try to take the good and the positives out of whatever the situation is. And it's not always easy. And it's, it doesn't happen all the time, but you try to, because that's the only, to me, I'd rather do that than be like, well, this is terrible. No, it's not terrible. Like, the good news is I can spend more time at home. Again, it's a little less stressful. I could do multiple games in a week now because I'm doing them from home. I mean, it's just different, and then I'll probably go back to being on the road and things will be like that again. So I try to just take advantage of every time that I've given and opportunities and go from there, because that's all you can do.
Absolutely. Pros and cons to every situation. Like you said, you're getting some valuable time with your wife and daughter that you wouldn't have otherwise. But as always, we appreciate your time, Mike. Look forward to having you back on this show, as well as the sports objective, as football season will be here before you know it. But before we let you run, go ahead and plug your social media, and we'll go ahead and wrap this show up.
Yeah, and then I'm on social media, pretty much all the platforms. It's just at Mike Corey Sports, working on getting a little bit more active there. I'm not always doing too much and posting too much, but I know that'll improve as the years go on for sure. But I am on there, so I'd love to have you guys follow me if you'd like, and we'll keep you up to date with whatever's happening as time goes on.
Folks, that is Mike Corey of ESPN.
That concludes this edition of the Bubba Rose Show. We appreciate you tuning in. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the show wherever you listen. Also, be sure to follow us on social media at Bubba Rosenbaum on Twitter, at Bubba Rose Show on Instagram. Like and follow the Bubba Rose Show Facebook page, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Let us hear from you by emailing us at thebubbaroseshow@gmail.com. Again, that's thebubbaroseshow@gmail.com. We'll talk to you next time, y'all.